And here we are trying to share a little bit about spirit and community in regards to online adult education, how we envision our programs, and how we continue supporting each other as we try to create community despite the distance. I know that we love to use the term online because the characteristic of this type of programming, but I think that I am more and more leaning toward just saying distant learning, as the online piece is just a medium on this process. I don't know if there is any particular question or concern that you would like to express before we continue in this small group.
I guess I'm just interested in hearing, what people have been doing or what they've tried or what they would like to try. That's sort of my interest.
I wanted to come because I'm interested in finding out if there's any places where we might make things available for each other. That is, if we are doing something interesting and it is on Zoom or virtual, we no longer are bounded by geographics. So how can we share with one another and maybe attend something that's at some other meeting or some other place that we normally wouldn't know about?
Great. Well, I imagine that more stuff will be rising as we go. Let me share a the elevator speech here in regards to programming online. Again, this is the experience that we have from Pendle Hill. Walter was also a big part of this transition as when we started offering our daily meaningful worship, welcoming people from the distance, despite where they are, and recognizing that we could not welcome people on campus after mid-March last year. So when we closed Pendle Hill campus for guests, we have the challenge in front of us that we needed to cancel all our workshop and retreat that we planned for year 2020. And we made the decision by mid-March about closing campus. And that decision was in a big part a response to what the government of Pennsylvania was mandating. If you were not an essential service, you should remain closed until future notice. That was the first governor's order that was issued in mid-March in 2020. So we said, well, we are not, by the definition of what is an essential organization that provides essential service, we are not one of those organizations. So we will need to close. And that implies that we needed to transform all the workshop and retreat that we have scheduled. Again, this is the Pendle Hill sponsor workshop. The other workshop and conference that happen on campus through our conference center experience, or the sojourners that were scheduled to visit campus on their own, we close that and notify them that we will be bound by the order that the government of Pennsylvania put in place at that moment. And our own programs where we engage in a conversation with facilitators and leaders to say, hey, we are so sorry that we need to do that. This is for the greater good. Let's work together to see if we can find, with the resources, technological resources that we have, if we can find a way to keep offering programs that are aligned with what we were going to offer on campus, recognizing that it is not transitioning an on campus to a online platform. You know, those programs are completely different. The experience of being in front of each other and being sharing meals in and walking on campus is completely different as the experience that we has been offering online. But recognizing that those differences, our education team started looking at how could we work with our leaders and facilitators to redesign those programs. And it took a couple months, like I would say 2.5 months, very intensive process, because some of our facilitators said, you know, I am not ready to do that. So we have a bunch of them that said, we are not ready to do this process at this moment. There were some that said, I am open to do that, but we need more time. And there was a third of the group of leaders and facilitators that since day one said, you know, as you are working on moving forward with this process, we want to be part of this, and we want to keep supporting Pendle Hill and keep supporting the people that look at Pendle Hill as a place for renewal and for transformation. So that was the big picture in the earliest stage of this. We have programs that there was one program that was already in the mid of the offerings, you know, a program that was designed to be 4 weekend retreat on campus. The first 2 weekends already happened. And here we were contacting all the participants to say, hey, we can no longer be offering the next 2 retreat on campus. So are you willing to participate on this? And before doing that, we work with the facilitators to transition everything and to, you know, try to redesign the programs, recognizing Zoom fatigue, recognizing what is the time for attention rate that we can hold when we have a learning experience facing on a screen over and over and over and over, and how many people can be really be present, fully present, when you are trying to deliver content that require a strong sense of confidentiality and support. So I say that because that program that I am mentioning has, at that point, as a major component, the experience of clearness committee. So we were doing clearness committee online in breakout room. And in order for us to support that process, considering that there was somebody providing technical support that was not part of the process that the people on the retreat was living or were living, was a little bit of challenge. So we have some learning there and how to support people there. Since that, we have been able to review what works for us, what worked for people, what worked for facilitator. And I can name that three of the main highlights that people recognize is like definitely time matter. You know, planning a session over 90 minutes of 120 minutes is not necessarily good for the process of experiential learning that we want to foster. So most of our retreat and workshop experience take that into consideration, and sessions are divided in this time frame. You know, the most is 2 hours, but we lean toward the 90-minute session. That was the first one of the first learning. The second big learning for us was like the recognition that just by having a program designed for a on-campus program, that doesn't mean that that the program can transition well into an online setting. So that there are other spaces that and other considerations that need to happen. For example, it's not that we are in the same room, but we are in private spaces. You know, people are joining from their kitchen, their living room. Uh, some people will have family around. Uh, how that will affect the content and the experience that people are having into the program. So recognizing that, we try to integrate those spaces into the programs as people were living and having their learning experience. And the third one, big one that I can mention here today is like how to maintain a great sense of flexibility, not just for the participants and what they are bringing to the table, but also for the facilitators and how they are managing the content and supporting people participation as they are sharing and living the experience online. This is just a little bit to talk about what we have been doing in the programs and education side of Pendle Hill. Of course, I mentioned that we open our daily meeting for worship online, and 150 people show up every morning that join us for a half an hour worship service, and twice a week, because we needed to expand a little bit the experience of building community. Twice a week, we have been offering a space for worship sharing or social time from time to time. And we found out that that had been a good way for newcomers to learn a little bit more about Quakerism, and at the same time for all friends to be with each other and to keep supporting each other as they are living, many of them in isolation, and as the only way that they can join their meeting community is through an online service at this moment. I think that the question that Elizabeth mentioned here about how can we, make things available to each other as we go, definitely meeting for worship at Pendle Hill has been one of those experiences. We also have we decided to open several programs that are free of charge, and try to invite as many people and as many Quaker organizations as possible, saying, hey, this is an opportunity for partnership. And based on that, I have to say that the learning continue. Like, for example, soon you will see that Simon and I are heavily invested in making Pendle Hill and Woodbrook to coordinate some experience to support the learning that we have gained about providing opportunity for meeting for worship in a blended or hybrid way, and how we can support monthly meeting on this. This is not about competing with the resources that yearly meeting are offering to monthly meeting, but it's a complement. It's a complement to say, hey, this is the learning that we have gained so far, and this is the things that are working and or not working for us. The same thing I can say, with Berkeley Press, we will be launching very soon a series of lecture that are Bible focused, and they are, if I well remember, I think that there are 6 or 7 lectures that will be a joint venture. All of them is a close collaboration with Berkeley Press and Pendle Hill, and we will bring around 16 people that will be participating on those lectures. The programs will be advertised very soon, as we are just finalizing details on some of the content and guest speakers that will be there. And the last one that I want to mention that is a different one, because the partnership is beyond our Quaker organization. Is on Monday, for example, we will have a book launch, Sarah Ruden's new translation of the gospel. And for this to happen, the partnership that we established was with the publisher and with Penn University here in Philadelphia. Why these two? The publisher, because, well, Sarah has been working on this. We have been supporting Sarah as she was finalizing the translation of the gospel over the past 2.5 years. And when the book was ready, we knew that if we were open, that event was going to have to be on campus, inviting people and so on. But we are not open for guests, so we will do a online book launch in partnership with Penguin and Random House, which is the publisher, and we will have Sarah and David Rosenberg, that is a Jewish scholar, that also will be providing. They will have a dialogue about the text and so on. But Penn University entered into the triangle here because Sarah has been a visitor scholar. While she was here at Pendle Hill finalizing this project, she also was visiting Penn University, and specific the department of the classic department. And right now, if you go to the website of Penn University, that event is featured there, and that event is featured as Pendle Hill and the different programs that Pendle Hill is offering, highlighting that particular one. And these are soft collaboration. This event is free of charge. For example, we have been able to do that thanks to another partnership with the Bible Association of Friends in America, and little by little, things has been working that way. Another partnership that I know that I am working right now toward its future development is with the network of conference and retreat center in North America, because we have found out that there is a lot of room for mutual collaboration among us, independently of the denomination that we are. Some some of those retreat centers are religious affiliated and some of them are not. And yet there is opportunity for us to keep supporting each other and walk away from seeing each other as just competitors, but seeing each other as retreat centers that need each other in order to keep providing the service that we provide to people. I don't know if that was sufficient there in regards to addressing the two things that were mentioned. Simon, how are you dealing with that at Woodbrook?
So, I mean, one of the things that we found that's really helped in terms of knowing what else is going on and collaborating is using social media. And so, I mean, that's what the reason I'm at this event is that I follow the FGC Facebook page, and there was a posting about this event, and I thought, that sounds great, I'll go. And so I think that's possibly one area, that's one thing that we've done quite a lot of at Woodbrook, is using our social media to connect with friends, and some quite simple things. You know, we have also offered online worship, and one thing that we chose to do, because we're quite connected with the Europe and Middle East section of Friends World Committee for Consultation, is we partnered with them on online worship, and a lot of the meetings in Europe outside Britain Yearly Meeting didn't really have the resources to move to worship on Zoom and online, because they might be meeting once a month and there's only 2 or 3 people, and so we partnered with them, and so I think partnership is a really key thing, and kind of mutual collaboration and not seeing each other in competition. And one of the things we did as a result of that partnership was offer our worship at kind of lots of different times, so people could participate at different times. And so that's something that kind of going forward, we're quite conscious of, that when we're scheduling live sessions as part of our courses, we also record them so that they're accessible for people who, you know, maybe can't participate at 7 o'clock in the evening UK time. And we tend to have a variety of timings of sessions. We're quite fortunate in that we have quite a large staff team. So we have a staff team of there are 10 people. A lot of them are part-time, but that meant that when we had to cancel our programs, a lot of the programs and sessions that we offered initially were run by our staff, and we did quite a lot of one-off sessions that were either free or where people could pay as led, and so we used that to kind of generate interest, and also that helped to shape our program. So if we offered a one-off session on you know, the Book of Revelation, you know, if we got 30 people to it, we would know that actually there might be interest in a longer program about that. And I really like what Francisco said about distance learning and online just being a medium, because I think as it becomes possible for people to meet in person and to travel, I think there is still going to be a bit of a reluctance to travel long distances for things that aren't essential. People, I think, will prioritize traveling to see family or things like this, and perhaps won't put going on a spiritual retreat. Some people will put going on a spiritual retreat as a priority, but people won't. And so I think finding ways to keep going with the distance learning, but maybe to think about how can that be in ways that's not just online, and ways to connect maybe with working with Quaker meetings and monthly meetings, and offering material to them. Elizabeth, in one of the groups I was in with you earlier, you were talking about blended learning, and so and that's something I'm quite interested in, and we're kind of exploring at Woodbrook as a sort of as a next stage.
I can add to this that another very soft and very steady way to promote that collaboration among us has been, calendars. Having PYN, for example, a Philadelphia yearly meeting and any yearly meeting in around the nation have calendars that make them available for us to post our events. And that mutual collaboration, just making people aware of the programs that are out there is something that is important to keep doing, because that's the way that we found like, oh, we also were thinking about offering something like that. How can we next time be in more cross communication? And I myself, to mention one example, put together in a day retreat the education team from PYN, for example, and the education team from Pendle Hill, just to get to know each other better and to brainstorm a little bit about that potential collaboration that we can be giving to the yearly meeting from a retreat center that is not associated to any yearly meeting, but that is aimed to support the work of yearly meeting in providing support to the monthly meetings. And the other way that we have found critical for us to be fostering this type of collaboration is to make ourselves available to participate in other events that people and that other organization has. And you will find out that some of our current staff, Pendle Hill is right now, running with half of the staff that more or less that it used to have. So we don't have the luxury of having 10 people in the education team, for example. Our education team is very small, very tiny right now. We hope that will change soon. We hope. But this is the realities that we are facing. And making ourselves available for events that other organizations are sponsoring, it is a way to also say, hey, we want to be of support to you. And this is how you see that some of our staff has been, I don't know, guest speaker or facilitator in workshop that other organizations organize, and so on. People, just being present is a way of making those type of connection and finding way for expanding our collaboration. And I can say that for example, the close relationship that we have developed more and more with friends, FWCC, Friends Wall. I always got the CC run Committee on Consultation. Yeah. and especially with the chapter of the Americas, where there is one particular retreat that we have been offering that may be an opportunity in support to the traveling ministry programs that they have, just to mention one of those cases.
Elizabeth, what was your definition of blended program that you talked about? What does that look like?
Well, blended learning generally in the context of higher education where I work has to do with something that's asynchronous, that's managed individually, and then something that happens at the same time. So that could be in person or on Zoom, for instance. And you blend the two together in learning and growth and so you're using resources, but you have to have a platform for that. So that's kind of a bigger and complicated more thing than maybe local meetings. Like my local meeting and our yearly meeting do not have any paid staff. We are just all us and whatever we can do. And so I doubt that anybody other than major organizations are going to really try that. But I would love to connect with other little guys who are doing things, and maybe there's a blog out there in the future that could pull together all these different opportunities, because I'm sure there are many opportunities that aren't publicized that are from small places that don't have publicity staff.
Yeah. You mentioned, Elizabeth, something that is critical that we are not looking at doing in the short run, and is it is too costly for us to invest in a learning management platform. We went that road, and we couldn't several years ago. We couldn't make end meet on that. So our blended program definition is more leaning toward the hybrid program. That is, how can we combine or welcome at the same time people on campus and on the distance. But the only aspect of the asynchronic programs or services that from Pendle Hill experience that we have are, when we have public lectures, that we can record them and make them available through our YouTube channel. But we don't have right now, for example, I know that this is different from other Quaker organizations. We don't have, for example, right now a learning management platform such as Moodle Room or Adobe Creative to support our learning experience. We couldn't do it well when we signed up for them several years ago, and there is no secret on that. When you sign for a learning management platform, you have to enter the game already with at least a dozen of courses designed. You cannot sign for a contract with any of those platforms without having your classes designed already, because you will start paying since day one, and you know that you will need to do recruitment, and if you will be designing your courses or your learning experience as you go, it won't be productive.
I agree. At Haverford College, they have Moodle and they do all that stuff and all that, but I think it is possible to use just Google Docs and Google Folders as a potential platform for some pieces. And I think toward right relationship with Indigenous people. They do a blended workshop that is partially live people and partially recordings. And I think they just use Google Docs, and you can record asynchronous things just using Zoom. It's quite a good platform for making recordings, and you have to sometimes do it 2 or 3 times because you sort of completely forget what it is you're supposed to do and look like a fool. But you can do that, and it's relatively available to folks. And I'm really a strong proponent of giving people something that they can look at in advance. That's like the didactic part, the lecture part, that they can do on their own time. And then that allows you to really focus on the interactive discussion, the use of breakout groups and all that kind of stuff with the time that you're all together. And the idea that Francisco's talking about, that if somebody misses that part, you can record it, and then that can be available. And so there's a flexibility, and
Yeah.
and I think just keeping the rhythm different, because since we're so zoomed out, you want to have things feel different in some kind of way, so that people don't just get like.
Yeah.
Those are all important parts.
I'm not saying that it is not possible. I fully agree with that. And we have been playing with that too. The piece is, for a monthly meeting, that can work perfect. You will have a volunteer or several volunteer working on that. If you are an organization that has to pay a staff, the monetarization of this is the piece that complicate that piece, because we have been supporting working toward right relationship. In fact, the Zoom account that they use is our Zoom account, like for example. But we recognize that if they are the ones that need to pay for that account, they will need to be finding either to philanthropic meaning money to have those platforms in place. And I'm not saying that this is impossible. They will get there at some point, but in the meantime, they need, this type of collaboration of saying, hey, yeah, before you get into your feet, let's give you a hand here. The thing with Google is a great articulation that you can do between the Google G Suite, using Google Doc, using Google Classroom, that is the platform that Google has designed as a learning management, and using also YouTube, that is also a Google related, is in the family of the Google. People will think that we are promoting Google here, but the fact is that it is true. If you have a Gmail account, you have available at least 60 apps that can support you to do e-learning easy. Yeah. For a monthly meeting, this is a great resources to explore. Yeah. For an organization like Haverford or Woodbrook or Pendle Hill that has to make generate some income in order to keep that moving, that may not be the best platform. Yes, we use it, but it complicates a little bit the stuff based on the number of people that you want to reach. And yeah, but yeah, for a monthly meeting, I go forward. I would say this is the way. And for a network or monthly meeting, that can be, we can have a bunch of content that you only need a link, and our content that are are already available from other Friends organizations that can really be put to good use by local meetings.
I think that's such an important point because there's plenty of content out there. You know, I could find plenty of inspiring videos or things to watch, but what we need is humans that can then facilitate interaction. You know, and that is the gift that I think we could be trying to develop in each other. You know, how do we know how to do that, and how do we share that? Like, one of the things that I could be maybe doing would be supporting someone with technology, but also supporting them spiritually, like someone who might be ready to do something online, but you know, maybe they need some meetings ahead, and they need a script, and they need some help, like you all have been providing for this meeting to the people that are leading it. So I think there's a lot of roles and a lot of important things that we could be thinking about that are new, that we haven't really had before. Like, we've had elders sitting with people who are leading programs, but maybe that elder role looks different when we're doing it online.
That I think that's a really important important point, Elizabeth. I mean, one of the things that we discovered quite early on when we started working with some of our, because as well as our staff, we use quite a lot of volunteer facilitators, friends who are giving service or doing it for a small honorarium. And we found actually what they mostly needed was someone to be almost the tech support, to, you know, kind of, you know, they could do the input, they could do the facilitation, they could ask the really searching questions that enabled people to connect with spirit, but ask them to put people into breakout rooms, and that throws them. And so, you know, actually that kind of thing, having that role, I think, and I think this is something in terms of worship as well, that actually having people who are who have that role of kind of tech support in distance learning and in online learning is, I think we quickly learned how essential that was. You know, when we were first doing things, we thought, oh yeah, the person doing the presentation can put people in breakout rooms, it's easy enough. But actually being able to focus on the facilitation or focus on the tech, you know, that it requires more people. And maybe there's a thing where monthly meetings may be able to collaborate, saying, you know, I'll support you in your in the workshop you're leading by being your tech support, and maybe we can open it up for my monthly meeting as well. And that's happened a bit in Breton Yearly Meeting. Not many meetings in Breton Yearly Meeting have done meetings for learning. They're starting to, but they've kind of been connecting sort of across monthly meetings and sharing, you know, sharing people, because it's easier to share people. And that's one of the reasons I'm really excited about working with Francisco on this event we're doing in June, is that it's going to be, you know, myself and Francisco and Lena from Pendle Hill, and we're kind of working together, and we're all going to be taking different roles in the holding of that event. And I think that's a really key thing to kind of to think about when you're setting these things up, but also how we can support each other in our communities in doing that.
I was just going to add to that one of the things I found, I serve as a coordinator for 8 other Quaker meetings. And when we have quarterly meeting, there's a lot of moving parts. So it has helped us on occasion to have like rehearsals like they did here, I think. So you know exactly who's doing what and the different roles, who's going to put it in the chat, who's going to put people in breakout rooms, you know how to do it. Is the meeting set up correctly in the beginning to have all the things that you need, especially if it's not your account, you're using somebody else's account. So it's like some of the things are things that you would do in 5 minutes if you were all in person a few minutes early. But now online, it's like you need, it's a little more complicated. So we've had several, let's have a practice session. Let's just make sure all this works and the screen sharing works and all that.
And this is critical because, something as simple as lightning, is important for programs. I remember one of the first program that we were having at, our facilitator, we always has been offering, like, we have somebody that will take care of the tech support, because it's important. We don't want you to feel, oh my God, what is the key for that function in Zoom? We don't want you doing that in the middle of a program. And light it play a big role here. So we have gone the ABC with our facilitator, for example, and with the people that reach out and ask us about some details on meetings online or programs online. We say, you may not find this important, but people want to see you. So make sure that the light is in front of you and not behind you, because if not, is make sure that if the program is, again, being held with a strong sense of confidentiality, make sure that you are in the right environment, that you are creating, a space for you to, in your house, where you can be quiet and people can share freely without any disruption, and that you can hear them well. And also the setting of the sound, how sound travel is quite important, making sure that your speaker and your mic are up to date. And most important, and I think that all of us receive these in one of the emails that we receive from FGC. Make sure that the app that you will be using, whatever it is up to date, because if not, you can be cut off in the middle of the call because the app realizes automatically that it needs to be updated. These are basic tips, that we are facing every day.
I also think it's really important to think about breakout groups really carefully and have clear instructions and maybe even clear outcomes and clear direction about what it is that you want to come out of the breakout group with. Because anyway, I just think that it needs some thought about that that's a little bit more carefully done than if you're doing it in a room where everybody's there. You can always sort of just check in and see how they're doing. And you can do that in online, but it's more complex and more complicated. And yeah, it's a good thing to think about.
Yeah, I was actually this morning, I was at a event run by another Quaker organization, and we had a time in breakout groups, and a number of people who came back from breakout groups and said, we weren't really sure what we were supposed to be doing, and we were, and it's yeah, as you say, Walter, the kind of thing that if you're all in a room, you can quite easily, kind of remind people or check in. Some of those things are harder online, so you need to do more forward planning.
Yeah. I can share that for me has been very useful before dividing people into breakout room for any event is, that minute of instruction. Why, that Walter, what you were saying, what is the reason, the thread of the breakout room, and what are the things, and also sharing a little bit about, you know, the attitude that you should have as you enter into this breakout room, because we need that, those reminder. Suddenly you have, 100 captive audience right there. And for some people this is very intimidated. For some others is an invitation to have a easy public platform to take over, and and your meeting or your breakout room can be, not necessarily serving the purpose of the religious program or the adult learning experience that you want for the group.
And we could probably have an entire session on chat, the role of the chat, the best way to use it, the worst way to use it.
Definitely.
Walter, I will invite you. I think that we should write a booklet about this. It will be a fun one. Yeah, fun one.
When we do programs for teachers, we have a person that monitors the chat, and then we kind of throw the ball back and forth, the different leaders, and that's kind of fun too. Thank you.
Welcome, friends. I expect Francisco to be here relatively soon. Nice to see you both.
Nice to see you, Walter. Where are you folks living these days? Are you still in Philly?
Yeah, we're in Germantown.
Yeah. Please give my greetings to Tracy.
I will.
Hello.
Hi, Walter, again, and welcome, David and Kat.
Thank you, Francisco.
I think that, I don't know if somebody will join us. There are some people that are still trying to figure out how to join the breakout room. So maybe, Walter, we didn't invite people last time to say where they are joining us from. So I will take advantage and say that I am Francisco and joining here from Pendle Hill in Wallingford, Pennsylvania. Where are you, David?
I'm in Tempe, Arizona, part of Intermountain Yearly Meeting.
And you, Kat?
I am in Ripon, Wisconsin. It's a little tiny town of 7,000, about halfway between Madison and Green Bay.
And Walter is around the corner from me. But Walter, do you want to say?
I did introduce myself a little bit, but I'm a member of Green Street Friends Meeting, part of Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. Yeah.
Great. Is there any questions that is prompting you to join this breakout room? That is any particular questions that you would like us to explore as we today a little bit about how a spirit and community online on adult religious education and programs is working from our experience?
I think for me, I feel like our worship group has a good spiritual nurture program. But, I don't know what I don't know, and we're small and isolated in some ways. So I'm curious what other people are doing. Yeah, just interested to hear.
I have, I have a very narrow, specific question, though I'm broadly interested. The narrow, specific question is whether there are mechanisms for, how shall I put it, encouraging people who don't speak easily or often to do so, and conversely, encouraging people who do speak easily and often not to do so in the setting of adult religious ed on Zoom.
This is a very interesting question. We closed the last group, the last session, just joking a little bit about that. One of the aspects around that, and it was the chat, and I was saying that I would love, after this is a little bit over, I would love to sit down with Walter to write a little bit about the experience that we have learned, that we have had in managing chat during meaningful worship, because you will be surprised. You will be surprised the things that you hear. Let me welcome Wesley. From Pacific Yearly Meeting. Where specific are you joining us from? You are muted.
Claremont meetings in Los Angeles County, about 30 to 35 attend.
Welcome. I will start sharing a little bit about that question that you raised, David, that issue of how can we, with a very practical sense, manage the people that, or support friends in recognize how much time they are taking to speak, and also to encourage other people that not necessarily speak, feel intimidated by any means to, to raise their voice a little bit.
I'm going to interrupt. Kat and Wesley, could you mute yourself while you're not talking? Because I think there might be an echo. That's great. Thanks.
Thank you for that. The experience that we have had here at Pendle Hill has been very diversifying because we have our daily meeting for worship that is offered right now over Zoom. And we have our education programs that are also offered via Zoom. Some of these programs, the education programs, we aim for them to have a very interactive space. And some of them, for example, will have a lecture style with a Q&A after. And usually when we are limited with time, what we do is that we invite friends to write their questions through the chat. And there is somebody that is monitoring those questions, in order to pass to the person that is speaking. So it demands an extra level of work because somebody has to be curating the question as they are arriving, clustering them, and presenting them to the speaker. That in that type of program, we don't have necessarily that issue that you were naming, because everything is happening through the chat, and you will think that people over the chat will be mindful about their share that they will be taking into this process. However, this is not always the case. You know, I have been monitoring and the chat for lecture style programs, and there are friends that feel prompted to send, 10 questions. And so just to give you an idea that you will think that the chat is a different platform for behaviors that you will expect that will happen when we have our mics open. And this is not necessarily different. I wanted to start there because it is easy to manage the chat that way, but the behavior is still being the same as if people has a mic on their hand. Yeah. Now, when we have had the opportunity to, and we love to have programs that are more interactive, including after meeting for worship twice a week, we have worship sharing and sometimes social time. And like, for example, today, this morning, after meeting for worship, we have 20 minutes of worship sharing in breakout groups of 3. And as I was introducing the experience, I said to friend, always constant reminder, please be aware that you will have around 4.5 minutes for each one of you. And we will have like some transition time from one sharing to the other. And that will be the 15+ minutes that we will have that you will have in your breakout room. So please be mindful about speaking from your heart, about exercising radical listening. So don't try to fix others as they are sharing, but welcome them with whatever they are bringing in their backpack. And that way we create a container that support, that people since the beginning will know that they are invited to honor others as they are mindful of the time that they are taking. This is one way. After that small groups, we open the room for the entire groups to be back, and we say, we have 10 minutes extra where you are invited to share a little bit about your own dance with these queries or with the topic that we were discussing. And today, and from time to time, I do the same. I said, friends, I know that many of us are prompt to talk very easily and to jump in whatever topic. Yeah. Let's be mindful and create a space for the people that usually don't speak. Let's create some space for those people to feel that they have room to do that if they wish. Yeah. So when you do that, people tends to be more soft in regards to, maybe I will need to, to hold my thought right now and create a space for somebody else that not necessarily speak so frequently. And it is a dance. Yeah, it is a dance, because you will have a friend that will jump in, and that friends will be the ones that will be speaking every single week. Yeah. So Zoom doesn't mean that we don't have a space for eldering, but that eldering not necessarily has to happen when the event is happening, because you have to weigh how much disruptive this will be to the entire community if you try to address the issue right there. So our practice here has been to reach out later to those friends and say, hey, just think a little bit about this. We value what you share, but sometimes it's important to create a space for others as we go, for for voices that we have not been able to hear because there is no time. We are time bound here in this platform. So mechanism, we can be very creative to have supportive mechanisms that are friendly, motivated to support each other on the way how we behave when we are having events or learning opportunity use over Zoom, yeah, or over any other platform. For us friends, this may be a huge challenge because we don't want to be exercising certain censorship. We want to walk away from censorship. Yeah, we want people to feel free and to feel welcome, and we need to dance with that reality. How we exercise radical hospitality, for example, that is something that we see from our experience at Pendle Hill. What is mean exercising radical hospitality when we are in a online experience here? Well, for us, that radical hospitality is creating that container for people to feel safe, to feel that they have the opportunity to express themselves, and for people to feel that they are being honored and welcome with as they are, yeah, and that we are at the same time supporting the creation of a larger community that is beyond geography. Yeah, it's quite interesting. If on that mix you put religious tradition, the diversity of religious tradition, or cultural diversity, and so on, that it is more complex than what I am trying to say here, because the collage of that picture has so many colors, and we need to learn how to work with them. Yeah, I can share with you, we have had experience that require of us a lot of patience, require of us a lot of holding ourselves for not being reactive to behaviors that that won't happen if we are gathering, for example, for worship at a monthly meeting. To give you an example, if we are at worship in a meeting and somebody is delivering a vocal ministry, I won't be chatting with Walter about what that friend is delivering. You see, these are stuff that we know are happening over Zoom because people are speaking and you see comments over the chat sometimes that these are stuff that you have to address. Yeah, we got surprised, but that happened, and we need to address. But the way to address this type of thing is a mechanism that is tried to build on the pastoral care that a regular monthly meeting used to have. And from Pendle Hill, the experience, because we are not a monthly meeting, for example, and the example that I am putting here is in regards to worship. Our practice has been to try to reach out to those friends, and in certain occasions to try to reach out to the pastoral care committee of that friend's monthly meeting Yeah, because we want to create a relationship with the monthly meeting to say, hey, we want to support your community as we go. Yeah. Again, this is an experience from monthly for worship experience for a programs that is oriented to expand our learning, our experiential learnings. We also have faced the reality that you have one or two participants that every time that the chat that the room is open for comments and questions, you will find some people that always will be, taking whatever amount of time is available for the entire group for that. And again, we in a gentle way with the facilitators of the experience and also with support from the person that is providing tech support, we have been able to navigate those situations by inviting friends to be aware of their time that they are taking for sharing. And so far, so good. Kat.
Yeah, I'd like to share some things that I learned as a teacher. I was a high school teacher for 11 years. And so I had to deal with the fact that a significant number of my students were introverts, and introverts take a longer time to process what they're going to say. They just need more time. And some things that I learned, if the reason that somebody is participating rarely is because they're an introvert and things are happening too fast for them, there are ways to structure it so that introverts also feel empowered. There are other reasons why people are quiet, but the things that I can say are for people who are introverted, these things help. One is to establish that there's going to be silence before anybody's going to talk, because that gives the quieter people a time to think. Another thing is to establish that everybody's only going to speak once until everybody has spoken, or the people who have not spoken have specifically said, I pass, I don't want to speak. I think sometimes there are people who don't speak very often who, in a situation like that, will deliberately just hold the space, hold the silence, and not speak to prevent other people from speaking. And I think, you know what, there's times when that's maybe a legitimate use of the power. Another thing I do is when I'm concerned that somebody may not be speaking because they just need more encouragement, they just need an invitation, I will tell them that I'm going to invite them. I may say, in a moment, I'm going to invite the people who have not yet spoken to speak. Give them a warning. Don't just call on them out of the blue. They need to have that warning and that time to kind of get used to the idea and decide whether they want to speak. So those are all things that have worked with introverts. Another thing that I like to do is remind people that there needs to be silence between offerings. And sometimes if there's somebody who abuses that and considers 3 seconds silence, I might say, plan to wait at least half a minute to a minute between things that people have said. And that just slows the whole thing down and makes it easier for the quieter people to participate. And for the people who participate a whole lot, if I feel like there's somebody, I tend to be one of those people myself. I have learned self-control to some degree, but I still am usually one of the first out of the gate. I have a rule for myself, and I sometimes share this with other people, that if I feel like I'm in danger of speaking too much, too fast, too soon, too often, too long, I will make a rule for myself for that meeting. Like, I will not speak until at least 3 other people have spoken. I will not speak until Barbara does. I will not speak until, I'll set some just rule for myself. And I think it might even be something, I've not done this, but an invitation you could make to those of you who speak easily and often. Make a rule for yourself to help you wait longer. Give more silence, more space for others. And just see what happens if they do that. You won't know their rule. They don't have to tell you what it is, but see if that changes the dynamic.
This is so good, Kat. Especially when suddenly we have a platform that offers us a captive audience over Zoom. that's a challenge. So generating good prompts that allow people to enter the conversation, knowing that, oh, this is the framework that we are trying to hold here to create this container is quite important. So thank you so much for sharing that.
There's one other thing, which is I think people really differ in their willingness to speak in a large group, especially. And if there's people who are routinely quiet in a large group, you might find out if there are other ways that they'd prefer to participate. Like, would they participate in a smaller group? Would they participate by, adding something to a Google Doc? Would they prefer to write their ideas down later? But just give people different options of ways to contribute, because not everybody likes to speak up in a meeting.
Mhm.
Also, nonverbal input. We have invited people to do things like bring a noisemaker to a meeting or a visual something to show celebration. And there are people who don't say anything, but when we say, okay, folks, we've just gotten through all the report summaries, make a joyful noise, unmute. Those people will participate as much as anybody. I mean, they'll be yelling and, waving things and shaking maracas. So it doesn't all have to be verbal participation.
I think it's also helpful for the facilitator to be courageous and clear and direct. So you can say, I'd really like to just take some time and see if there's anybody who hasn't spoken yet who would like to speak, and like create that space. Or we've heard from a number of people who represent sort of this segment of our community, and I wonder if there are people who are from other parts of our community that would like to speak. Or and then they may not still speak, but that's okay. At least that there's quite been created space for them to consider if they would like to step forward.
Oh, it's funny, I'm just thinking of, my wife and I led workshops at Friends General Conference gathering for quite a few years. And one year I thought, well, to try to, have some kind of limit on speaking and try to get everybody involved, we would have, I think I'd call it a talking stick or a talking stone or something. And put it in the center, and that worked for one. But the next time we did it, one of the people in the group started crying and was very upset that this object was there that you had to pick. No, she just couldn't deal with that at all. So it's kind of funny. Different people have different, you have to be flexible, and what works in one situation may not work in another, but just, yeah, those are good talks.
Well, I'm grateful that the group had so much to offer on the issue that I raised. I'm wondering if Wesley had, or if Kat had particular issues they wanted dealt with.
I could ask a question, but I'm fine if we don't address it and go to something that Wesley may be interested in. I'm curious if you all have any suggestions for encouraging Bible study among people who so far are not at all interested in that, and resources that are an in for adults who don't know the Bible well. I go to a Bible study weekly with a group in Portland. I can't do it with my worship group, and I can't do it in our yearly meeting because there just aren't enough people that seem to want to do it. But it's occurred to me that maybe I haven't been very creative about overcoming the obstacle of a combination of ignorance and disinclination and sort of just dismissiveness about the whole Christian project, Does anybody have any good doors open to that? but I'm happy to have other questions. We don't have to answer this.
I'll just ask, do you know about the Quaker Bible study process? Are you acquainted with that? It's written up. It's comes from a couple from North Dakota. I'm trying to remember their name. Do you know, Francisco? Can you remember?
Spears,
Yeah,
Larry Spears.
Larry Spears. And it takes a very Quaker perspective towards the Bible, that the spirit is kind of caught there in the text, but it's actually understood from personal direct experience. And so it has a series of 5 journaling questions, and everybody starts by journaling around those questions. They read the text together, and they journal around the 5 questions, and then the questions are basically, what's the author trying to say? What did you see for the first time in this reading? What troubled you about the reading? I know one is, what's the implication of the reading? There's one other I can't remember, but you write about that. And then people share having been prompted by those questions. And it's way different than sort of being talked to about the Bible, or and what you disagree with about in the text is like one of the questions. So you're invited to be in conversation, even if it doesn't work for you. And it has worked in many meetings that I've been in to allow people to approach the Bible and learn and gather great things from it, and have a different perspective to a text that they might have some skepticism about.
And I can share from my own experience that I have facilitated here at Pendle Hill several Bible focus learning opportunity. Yeah, one of the most successful one was Evangelium, that was an introduction to the Gospels in general. Yeah, and these were again a distance learning opportunity, considering studying the gospel, or a good introduction to the gospel based on the experience of liberation theology, for example. Yeah, through that lens, and combining some opportunity for what Walter was saying, the personal experience, the personal approach, the community approach, what we know about this particular text, and also how we can, what is the implication for today. And this is one of the experience. The other experience that I found very useful, that is again very similar to what Larry proposed in his methodology, is Lectio Divina. Lectio Divina is there are 2 main streams of Lectio Divina. The scholastic one, that is more looking at, studying the text more and more, or you can use the mystic experience of Lectio Divina, that include, how is beyond the knowledge that you have of the Bible archaeology of the text. Yeah, I have used both in several offerings here at Pendle Hill, and I have had that experience that you said, like, wow, I distance myself from the Bibles since I was a young adult, because the oppressive meaning of blah 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 blah. But looking at the text through these lenses allow me to have a much better relationship. And I have people that has contacted me several years later saying, you know, that retreat when we were invited to do this type of exercise with the scripture has helped me a lot, because over the past 2-3 years I have been able to look at this with a new eyes. From our experience at Pendle Hill, we has been providing opportunity like this to support friends and others to have a grasp of the relationship and their relationship with the Bible in a completely different way. And for example, there are more stuff that are coming in that way. And what we try to do is in support to friends and a monthly meeting and beyond Quakerism, to be fully transparent here, that we can offer opportunity for people to have a better understanding and on their relationship of the Bible. Like, for example, on April 22nd, John Dominic Crossan will be starting a series of 4 lectures associated under the umbrella called Jesus, History, Theology, and Evolution. This is Bible focus. You know, on June, we will have another, a more Quaker, if you wanted to put it that way, a lecture series also that will be associated in how friends understand and their experience that they have of certain texts within the Bible. But there are many opportunities, including an early translation of the entire Bible done by early Franks. You know, well, not by early Franks, but early since 150 years ago. But yeah. Go ahead. I think that Wesley.
Another, I guess, a little bit different. We have in our meeting, there are a couple of members who have organized something called a Bible bunch. So it made it sort of not seem as threatening, just the Bible bunch, but they pick a verse and then people gather and discuss it. It's actually pretty well attended, I'd say. Maybe a third of people at the meeting might stay for this after meeting for worship, but I think, yeah, it's probably there are definitely a lot of people, at least in my meeting, who are kind of, you might say, refugees from a more formal religion, and they want to get rid of a lot of those connections that they associate with traditional Christianity. They're uncomfortable with a lot of the words. So it's always a challenge. But I had a question, and something that I've thought about a little bit, but maybe you have too. There's sort of having the access to technology, and we've been having in our Zoom meetings, we've had guests come to lead programs, educational programs every month, sometimes twice a month. And often they have slides, and they may show beautiful slides and PowerPoint presentations, etc. So I don't know, there's kind of, with the access to technology, you might say a temptation to get away from what we think of traditionally as Quaker simplicity of, finding answers maybe within, how does it speak to you directly? And the use of the technology to kind of, I'm trying to think of the right word, they appeal to a certain part of your soul, your brain, which is excitement, beauty, joy, but in maybe a more superficial way, because you're not getting maybe those deeper spiritual connections that you might have in the silence-based worship. So I don't know if I think for some people there might be a sense of, gee, we're really getting often to entertainment here instead of worship? Just a question I raised.
Go ahead, Kat.
I haven't thought about that. I was just reading an article recently about several of the reasons why people find Zoom meetings tiring. And there were some, I think, neuroscientists who looked at it, and they brought up a number of things that are not obvious. Like, it turns out that the distance that most of us are on Zoom, I mean, in the sense that, like, my camera is a foot from my face, maybe 2 feet from my face in a typical meeting, that is a distance that apparently our, like, lizard brain associates with either an impending kiss or an impending punch. Like, we are kind of in a state of arousal because that's not actually a normal distance for us to be from each other. So right there's a certain, like, a level of stress. And then there's the physical distance in other ways. It's not visual. I will say that, and I think our brains crave novelty, and being glued to a place where we are seeing all this stuff happening in a two-dimensional screen that stays the same size and the same distance. There's a lot about that is very, very unnatural for us. And my feeling is anything that we can do to bring our senses into the experience is good. So I aim for more sensory input of different kinds, because basically we're getting the sensation of sitting in the same place and not moving a whole lot. We're getting our eyes focused on the same distance away from us. We're getting, there's all sorts of things that are it's a little bit of sensory deprivation in a way. It's a very limited range of sensory input that we're getting. So I think anything we can do to expand that range of sensory input is probably a good thing for Zoom. And I hear what you're saying about the entertainment piece of it, but I will say that I am very moved when something touches me in another way. Like, I truly was moved by Peterson's little video about COVID. I found it very touching, and I didn't find it manipulative. I felt like it was an entryway for me. I didn't feel like he was yanking my cord. I felt like he was opening a door. Now, other people may have felt like that was yanking cords, right? And okay, but I would say we need all the help we can get to connect with ourselves, to connect with each other, to connect with spirit. And I wouldn't turn down any tool that seems to work. And I've found, for me, and I think for our worship group, which has grown actually significantly during the pandemic, I think a lot of what we're doing is actually working better than what we were doing before. I think the reliance on silence together, it definitely works for some people, and it definitely doesn't work for other people. I guess I'm all about finding more ways in rather than saying which ways I think are best.
I can share from our experience. We during meeting for worship, we don't share. We don't integrate slides. Our daily meeting for worship, what we try to do is, because again, we are a larger community, 150 regularly, what we do is, like, we spotlight the barn, the worship room at the barn. If somebody is delivering a vocal ministry, we spotlight that person to the entire group, and we go back as the message is over to focus on the barn. We remove the spotlight feature at the end of meeting for worship when we for the time where we request for prayer, joy, sorrow, and concern. But during meeting for worship, we don't share slides, and the focus is on the barn or in people that are sharing a vocal ministry. The other piece that I wanted to say that is very useful, and again, this is associated with what Kat was saying, and we remind these to people. At least I remind these to people when I am the facilitator of programs. It's like there is a rule of thumb that said that it's the 20-20-20. See, every 20 minutes that you are in a educational programs or meeting for worship or whatever over Zoom, every 20 minutes you have to look outside of your screen to a distance of 20 feet, yeah, for 20 seconds. That allow your brain to, it's like a refresh. It's like giving a little bit of clean water to your brain as you are going through this experience. That help with the fatigue, that help with the interaction that you are having, and so on. But mostly is for the health of you as a participant in any of those events. So 20-20-20. Every 20 minutes, look at something at least 20 feet from your screen for 20 seconds. Simple rule, but it works. And I think that we will be pulled out very soon. I think 10 seconds.
They said 5 more minutes.
Oh,
Yeah, that timer is not relevant to anything. It's something else is ending somewhere else in the world.
that's good to know, because
Well, I want to raise the thing that we talked about in the last version of this, and that is trying to think creatively about ways to make different parts of the adult religious education feel different from each other. And so the small breakout groups, the way you use the chat, but also considering asynchronous pieces where you create, say, a video on Zoom that you post on a Google Doc or in a Google folder that gives like the lecture part that somebody can experience that on their own at their own time when they're ready, and that then the focus in face-to-face is able to be more interactive. And so thinking about that, and then also the piece about if you're going to send somebody into a breakout room, being really clear about what I think Lori spoke about that in the in-between, like having good instructions, a clear idea of what the goal is for the breakout group, idea about what it is you want to bring out of the breakout group to share in the large group. Those things also allow you to have the least amount of time on Zoom with the most productive, spiritually productive and activities. And thinking about that intentionally, I think, is a really important part of doing this successfully, I think.
I'd be curious just to hear other people's religious education projects or issues, things that you do in your meetings. But if somebody else has a question, by all means, go for that.
No, I was just going to mention that we started a book discussion group online for, I guess, about 8 or 10 people in the meeting wanted to participate, and that actually was quite meaningful. And we ended up choosing almost all our books are somehow connected to Black Lives Matter, racism, you know, both fiction and nonfiction. That's been really a deep discussion. So that's one opportunity. I think it's a good educational opportunity, just working through a book. I think we're over or something. Anyway, thank you very much, Francisco and everybody else. Thanks.